This is the Mighty Oaks Daily Devotional. My name is Jeremy Stallnecker, and today we look at just a couple of verses from Psalm 95 that help us to understand the power of worship. The power of worship, or we could say it this way, the consequences of not being a person who worships. However you want to look at that, positively or negatively, there is a result in the life of a person who is not one who worships God. We talked about this a little bit when we looked at the first couple of verses of this 95th Psalm, that we're called to worship. We're called to enter God's presence with joy. Why? Because He is above all kings. He is above all little g gods. He is above everything. He is worthy of our worship. As we work through the 95th Psalm, we come to verse number 6, which says this: "O come, let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord our Maker." Verse 7, "For He is our God, and we are the people of His pasture and the sheep of His hand. Today, if you will, hear His voice." Verses 6 and 7 reiterate what we already saw in verses 1, 2, and 3. We are to sing praise to the Lord, to worship Him. Here the language is to bow down before Him, to remain humble before our Creator, to acknowledge who He is, and to live our lives according to the truth of who He is. Which verse 7 tells us that we are His people, we are in His pasture, and that we should hear His voice. I love that it says, if you will, hear His voice. As we hear the voice of God, we understand who He is, we acknowledge His truth, our faith and confidence is in Him. We should be people of praise. But what happens if we're not? The very next verse, verse number 8. "Harden not your heart as in the provocation, and as in the day of temptation in the wilderness." This passage goes on from verse 8 down to verse 11 through the rest of the psalm here, Psalm 95. And the contrast is made. Be a person of praise. Be a person who worships God. Be a person who understands who God is. Or you're going to end up just like those in the wilderness who hardened their hearts. He calls it here the provocation, who hardened their hearts against God. When we look to the nation of Israel in the wilderness, what went wrong? How did they go from a relatively short journey out of Egypt into the promised land to 40 years of wandering around in the wilderness? What happened? Well, there are a lot of things that happened, but fundamentally what happened is they forgot what God had done. They forgot how God had worked miraculously to free them from the Egyptians, to bring them over on dry land across the Red Sea, to feed them, to care for them. They forgot what God had done. They stopped glorifying Him, honoring Him, worshiping Him. And in the process, their hearts were hardened. I believe one of the greatest antidotes to a hard heart, to a heart that does not acknowledge God, that doesn't live for God, that doesn't pursue God. One of the greatest antidotes is a heart of worship and praise. Why? Because we must remain humble to worship God. We must keep in sight all that God has done, and our confidence and faith is not in ourselves or in the other things that we see, but in Him. Remain a person of worship, a person of praise. Keep God in His rightful place, and you won't experience that hardness of heart the children of Israel had to endure. Thank you for joining me today. I look forward to talking to you tomorrow for another Mighty Oaks Daily Devotional. For more information about the Mighty Oaks Foundation and the work that we do for veterans, active duty service members, and first responders, please visit mightyoaksprograms.org.